right, folks, welcome to Lead Generation Week. Thanks for joining us again for another great session. My name is Michael Faree. As usual, I know this sounds repetitive and all that sort of stuff, but just in case this is your first session of Lead Generation Week that you're joining, I do want to share a couple items with regards to questions. First of all, we want you to ask as many questions as you would like. It certainly helps provide more information to the discussion and really pulls more information out from the speaker. So please ask any and all questions. In fact, I already see questions coming in from the app. So thank you. You can ask those questions via the app, or you can click on the little icon on your video screen that says Q&A, and that will post right into Zoom. But you can use the mobile app or the desktop app as well. So without further ado, let's bring on our speakers. Today's session, Marketing Your Way Out of a Pandemic to Hit Fall Enrollments. We've got two speakers today. We've got Greg and Daryl Maddox with us from Greg Advertising. Greg, welcome to Lead Generation Week, and I'll hand it over to you and let you take it from here.
Yeah, it might be. I think Daryl's got Greg on his screen as well. And so
what's up with that?
I'm the better looking one, right? So I'm the new improved Greg. So today we'll both be talking about really its broad scope, but it's tailored to education, education lead generation. And so we've been in education lead gen for 30 plus years. Have focused not only on that, but also insurance. We're in insurance. We're in direct products, e-commerce products on the internet. We are direct response in everything that we do. Today's presentation is more about historically what's happened, from a pandemic perspective, and then as well as recessions. And so when we take a look at economic downturns throughout history, this isn't the first one. This isn't the first one we've seen, and it's not the first one that has high unemployment rates. And so, when you start taking a look at recessions or depressions, they don't really call them depressions anymore after the Great Depression. And so they start calling them recessions because it sounded better. And so, we've had a lot of them through the years. If you go to the next slide, Dee.
I'm pushing the button.
Good. Pushing the buttons.
There we go.
Good. When you took a look at the Great Depression, high level of joblessness, 24.9%. We're not quite there yet on unemployment in this recession, and we'll talk about that. But really, the GDP plunged about 50%, and that's really what threw the whole market into a tailspin. Jobs weren't plentiful. Jobs suffered. We may see that here, and we're going to talk a lot about that and what happens when unemployment skyrockets like that, especially in EDU and for online in general. And so when we take a look at the Great Depression, we're not quite there yet. It's not as bad as the Great Depression. It is the highest unemployment rate since the Great Depression, but we're not quite there. And our plunge in GDP is nowhere near that. The Great Recession in 2007 to 2009, it ran about 18 months. It was the most severe. GDP fell about 4.3%, which is pretty significant. The financial effects of the Great Recession, basically the housing market crashed, which then the fiscal market crashed after that. And so when the S&P 500 falls 57%, that's pretty significant. It took a long time for that market to recover. And really what came out of that situation was not a little bit of unemployment, not a ton of unemployment, but it was at probably 9.7, 10% unemployment there for a while. And so it was significant enough to impact the education market, which we'll talk about here in a minute. A lot of people lost a lot of money in real estate and finance in that recession. Of course, the government bailed some of those people out with some stimulus programs. The current downturn, when we look at COVID-19, is measured by a percentage of decline. It's the hardest hit since the Great Depression, which we talked about. In 2008, we saw the Dow, like I said, fall. But so far with the COVID-19 crisis, stocks slashed about 37%. but has already regained, that 35% of that 37% back. And so the market really is elastic. And if we want to take a look at the next slides, you can kind of see what happened in, in addition, unemployment and bankruptcies. The Bureau of Labor Statistics released unemployment data showing over 20 million jobs in April were lost, 14.7% unemployment. Of course, it's the worst since the Great Depression. If there's no additional stimulus package by June 30th, many of the economists that are out there are saying that we could go to 40 million. And at that point, we certainly would be pushing Great Depression style of unemployment. The problem is the PPPL money running out. If there is no additional stimulus program, you're going to see a lot of businesses let go of those employees that they held on to so that they could get the PPPL money and the stimulus package. That ends throughout the month of June. And so you're probably going to start seeing large sum of layoffs once those people hit those numbers so that they don't have to pay that money back. If they lay off anybody before that point in time, they could possibly not reach their salary numbers or salary payout numbers, which would force them to pay back money to the government, which nobody wants to do. So everybody, I think, will hold on to their employees until that point in time, that 8-week ends, and then they're going to let people go. When we look at bankruptcy filings, if you'll go back one more, Daryl, bankruptcy filings are significant as well, and they're going to add to unemployment. A lot of these companies filed Chapter 7 or Chapter 11, and so some of them won't be back. Some of them were cashing out. A lot of businesses are cashing out right now, not coming back from the stay orders. And so when you take a look at these companies, a lot of them are from the service industries. A lot of them are from field oil. A lot of them are from travel. And so when you start taking a look at the people that work within these industries, some of them are degreed and some of them are not degreed. And so when we look at hospitality and entertainment, generally those people are not degreed or post-secondary educated. And so there's going to be a ton of people that are going to be left jobless in the market from these bankruptcies. It will have a ripple effect through the economy. Like I said, there'll be additional bankruptcies from these bankruptcies as well as unemployment. The total impact of COVID-19, it's based upon a 3-month shutdown, which we're coming to the end of that now. In this scenario, schools and businesses open. Morningstar predicted it last month by late June, resulting in a moderate second wave of infection. They're not really calling this the second wave of infection. They're just saying it's a reboot of the first wave of the infection that's going to occur. There will be a spike out there. There's no way around it. And so we have to anticipate that spike. We may see some additional stay orders come out of that, which may drive future unemployment or may drive future bankruptcies associated with businesses that are out there. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, if you follow that, they predict a 3% decline in global GDP, 5.9% GDP decline in the United States, which is very significant. It's $9 trillion. And so that is a significant amount of money that we're going to lose because of this situation. The current situation, what are we going to do with it? Today's reality, we can learn from the past, and we did a lot of research into what past marketers did in recessions and depressions. We can study those failures and successes. EDU marketers and strategists will need to understand that the consumer is evolving right now. Through strife and chaos, innovation occurs, whether we like it or not. We figure out to do things. A year ago, I probably wouldn't have been on screen doing this presentation to you, but now it's a norm for people to get on screen. And if people don't get on screen with you, you're like, okay, that's weird. People need to get on screen. And so EDU marketers and strategists will need to understand the consumer. They've changed now. And with that change comes some opportunity. During recessions and depressions, consumers certainly set stricter priorities in terms of their spending. Their spending will be reduced and they'll be choosier. Not to say that consumers ever stop spending. They really actually never do stop spending money out there. The spend rates are out there. There are different types of consumers. I mean, if somebody's financially strapped, of course, they're not going to be able to spend dollars, but the majority of the consumers out there are going to continue to spend their dollars, but they're going to be choosier in what they spend those dollars on. Cash is king in a recession and depression, and everybody knows that. And so people try to stay cash positive throughout those. Businesses typically cut costs, reduce prices, postpone new investments. Marketing expenditures and areas from communication to research are often slashed across the board, but such indiscriminate cost cutting is a mistake in our opinion. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Do you have anything to add, Daryl?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to add that, and from the first bullet on this slide, I think that's one of the most important things we need to, as a society, but specifically as a sector in the EDU sector, need to understand that there's no two downturns that are the same. In fact, this one's a lot different. When you looked at that first list of the recessions and the Great Depression and everything that happened there, a lot of it was economically driven. This one, outside of the Spanish flu, this one is driven by a whole nother channel, a whole nother area. And it's one that we've never really been through. So as you look at today's reality may not be our reality in 30 days. I don't think anybody in mid-March, actually in mid-February, could have said what was going to be in mid-March. And then when we were all in mid-March, I don't think we had a good idea that as it turned out in April and now in May, and soon here in June. So it's going to be one that is constantly evolving, and we're going to constantly look at, because we can learn from what it is. And we're going to talk about some of the Great Depression a little bit more and some of those and what it was, but it's going to be a challenge for us as we go through this every time. So you look at today's reality and you kind of compare that to the history, to the past history, and historically recessions, depressions have eroded confidence and buying power. They've driven consumers and businesses to adjust. This won't be different than that. There will be adjustments. Behavior, both short-term and long-term, will change. And we as in the education industry, as well as any business, is going to have to understand that. Consumers will realize, and I think they've already started to realize, overspending could be risky, and it built on quicksand or credit. Some of that happened, and I think people are slowing down. Partly that quick of a spike in the unemployment, I think, is going to help that area a little bit on the spending. But again, you're going to get people, certainly as time goes on. And I know I was listening to NPR on my way home last night, and they were talking to some families who are really, wondering when this is going to end and what they're going to be able to do, because without a job or a primary breadwinner in the household, it's really having an economic impact on a lot of families.
I mean, a lot of it is also state to state, the impact on people state to state. The rules and regulations are state by state. There aren't a lot of federal guidelines associated with it. And so rent controls or, rent abatements, those aren't federally mandated right now. And so state by state has to mandate that. And so some people aren't paying the rent, some people are paying their rent, some are abating it. And, that's going to be an issue too, because a lot of people are overextended on credit cards or overextended on property. And if they lose their revenue stream in one way or another, that's going to send them into a tailspin, which we're all leading in this presentation down the funnel. There is a question out there right now. Do you think the coronavirus response is a little overused? It seems like every company has a website banner and a COVID update. How do you suggest being sensitive to the current environment? I think you have a responsibility to your current constituency, your students or your customers, to let them know what you're doing. To tell them nothing that you're doing zero would be irresponsible. They do expect a response from you one way or another. Having a COVID statement on your website, what you're doing about COVID, your safety procedures associated with COVID-19 would be important, as well as communicating that to your clients. There's a lot of positive things that can come out of here, out of this situation. But you've got to handle it appropriately with your messaging. I think it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to put it out there. People that are coming to your site are interested in what you're selling and the products you're selling. And so saying, you know, hey, we understand the COVID-19 situation, and, you know, here's how we're coping with it. I think that's therapeutic for most.
I might even add to that, and I'd even go a little bit farther. It's not just okay. I think it's necessary. I don't think it's, I think there are some people that are going overboard with it. I don't think it's being overused. I think it's really important with the consumer to acknowledge the situation we're all in, even as it gets better or as it flattens out or whatever it may be. But to ignore it or pretend that it is not there or it's better than it is would actually, I think, do more damage to your brand because it shows an unawareness or it looks like you don't care. I think that's a great question, and it's a fine line. I think we talk about that a little more in the presentation, but it is something I would acknowledge it. I wouldn't overdo it.
Right. You don't want to really take advantage of it. And you're starting to see some people take advantage of the COVID-19 situation. You're seeing a lot of promotional emails on, if your business is struggling, we can help factor money for you. I see one of those a day now. And so the factoring individuals are out there, the financial factoring. Let's say that that's a bad business model. It happens. But, you know, overdoing it or taking advantage of this situation isn't really what you want to do. You want to be appropriate in your implementation of your messaging.
And I can tell you that what I don't need from any business anymore is an update on the COVID situation. I get that enough through the news and every other way. What I want to know is COVID that's going on, the situation that's going on, and how it's affecting whatever business I'm trying to interact with. So, yeah, I agree. There are too many businesses out there right now. I get too many emails every day that just want to update me on where COVID's at, where the economy's at. I'm like, I already know. I don't need you to tell me. So, moving on and comparing history to today's reality. That's the reality. We talked a little bit before about the bankruptcies and the defaults. Now we see them increase, and what typically goes on during a recession, somewhat like what we're going through. But that being said, for educational institutions, it's a little bit different. We don't react the same on an economic downturn often. One of the peculiar things specifically is that first bullet is that normally we run the opposite direction of the economy. As the economy is going down, it actually feeds education. It becomes that industry tends to have more opportunity presented to us. You look in the Great Recession, the number of students enrolled in college jumped by almost 2.5 million, or nearly 16%. Undergraduate students in the fall of 2007 went to a peak of 18.1 million students from the fall of 2010. So you can see there's a lot of opportunity in the EDU space. Colleges and universities, higher education tends to react just a little bit differently.
Yeah, I mean, we look at this, and I mean, here's the warning side of this is, you know, Congress came in, and during the Great Recession, they did extend Title IV funding. And so they increased Title IV funding, increased the loan amounts that students could get, and increased the amount of money available. Well, you know, the ripple effect of that was somewhere 6 years, 7 years down the line, because, you know, only 39 students who enrolled in a community college in 2008, which is a 2-year school, had degrees six years later. And so a lot of these people went to school, but they never did graduate. And so we have to be careful of that. They blamed a lot of that on the for-profits, but that wasn't really the issue. At the end of the day, and we handle for-profits and nonprofits, but the fact of the matter is all schools need to be responsible with their enrollments and the spending power of the student, and make sure that we are managing those students to completion at the end of the day. You know, I'm a lead generator, but at the end of the day, I worry about our client's business. And, you know, graduating students in the EDU is the way to go, not just getting them in the front door. We've got to get them in the seats and get them graduated. And that's what's most important. Whether you're a for-profit, nonprofit, that is what is most important. We don't want to see people default. And there will be high numbers. If you want to go to the next slide, Daryl. We take a look at, you know, pre-COVID projections of post-secondary education. Really in this chart, I don't really care what happened after 2018. We know what's going to happen. If you take a look at what happened in 2007 to 2011, that big bump in there in the actual, you saw 1.2 to 1.3% increase in male and female enrollments across the board. And so we're going to see that again. That is going to happen again. And if you go to the next slide, Daryl, thank you. Typically in these types of situation, and because unemployment is, the payments are so high, you're going to see laid off workers or unemployed workers hang on to that unemployment for a while, because in some instances, those people are making more money than they did when they were working if they're truly laid off. Some of those people will exhaust because their jobs will become available again. And if they do not take those jobs, then technically by law, they should stop getting unemployment benefits. But the fact of the matter is, anyone who qualifies for unemployment is probably going to hang on to unemployment because they're going to make a lot of money, almost more money than they were making before, just by staying on unemployment. That will run out in time. In addition, what's happening is federal and state funding for education, schools is being cut. And so, these are traditional nonprofits and their budgets are going to be cut. And so what you're going to see there is they're going to do a lot of things. They're probably going to lay off some of their professors, their adjunct, and then you're going to also see them raise tuition. And so they'll come across in those traditional 4 years and 2-year schools are going to have to increase tuition to survive. And so they'll put the weight back on the student at the end of the day. What happens there is that triggers students looking at other options, because from a fiscal standpoint, a parent's going to look at it and say, do I want to spend $35,000 a year on tuition, or do I want to send them to a school that's going to get them out in 18 months with a skill set for $18,000? And so, those types of situations are going to be analyzed. And what generally happens there is people tend to go for the trade schools, the quick retraining, something that's going to get them back into the working world a lot faster than having to go forth and get 124 hours or an additional 34 hours for a graduate degree. And so you're going to see a boon again in terms of people going back to school. I don't believe that unemployment is going to be solved overnight. I don't believe that unemployment's going away. I think unemployment's going to get worse than it is now. I think there will be more bankruptcies. I think there will be more layoffs. And as I said in the beginning, when the PPPL money runs out, we're gonna see a ripple from that. And so all of that will drive, in my opinion, to the for-profit, which is what happened in 2008, 2009, 2010, and into 2011. Again, it's my opinion that the for-profits need to be more responsible at this point in time, because they're under scrutiny from Congress, especially the Democrat group will scrutinize how we manage these students as they come into the pipeline. And so I think we'll see more people. We saw, and Daryl and Michael and I were talking about it before we went up, we saw an initial bump and then a drop, and then a bump, then a drop in lead volumes as it pertained to education in the first 4 weeks. But now, Daryl, you can probably talk more to it on how that's flattened out, how we're seeing lead volumes start to go up and be more efficient. I mean, is that what you see, Daryl?
Yeah, absolutely. We're starting to see it restore back to the pre-COVID time. It was just a little bit of a wild roller coaster, but part of that you could almost measure against the news that was coming out early on when this whole thing in cities were starting to shut down. Leads shut down because everybody was focused on that. But after a few days in the house or a week in the house, you saw it to come back up. And then you saw again where news came out and nobody knew what was going on and it dropped off. But we're really starting to see it's not necessarily a flatten out. It's more of it's a flatten out and moving back to norms. And lead flow is actually in a pretty good place. Now, at the same time, we're starting to see a lot of shoppers, people that aren't sure they want to go back to school, but know that that's maybe an option they need to start looking at, or somebody has told them they should start looking at. So now you have to watch on top of not just lead flow, but conversions and what the quality of that lead is. Although we're seeing that to be fairly strong as well. And we're going to talk about that in these upcoming slides, what schools need to do in order to make the school successful and help the schools succeed.
Yeah, before that, we've got one question from Bill. He says, will EDU have issues with the lack of government funds, past 5 to 10 issues with student debt due to current overall financial situation that the government is providing now? Student funding hasn't really decreased. I mean, it's still there. Title IV funding is available to individuals. There may be some government cuts, but what they had did in the current CARES Act and what I've seen in the ARROS Act is they're pouring money into either postponing that debt, the current debt for some of those students, or the Democrats are trying to eliminate that debt for those students and make it go away. But the fact of the matter is this, the funds are there for people to go to school. The government will find ways, as they know the base of any society is in education, or one of the bases of a society is its education. And so they'll keep funds out there. Now, will the Democrats try to restrict the for-profits from getting some of those funds? Probably. They've tried to do that over the last 4 or 5 years, but have been unsuccessful to this point in time. They've got plenty on their plate right now to worry about besides going after the for-profits. There really aren't any bad actors in the for-profit space right now. Most of for-profit is focused on just the student, and everybody's learned over the last 10 years to really put their energy and their effort into helping the student graduate. I mean, everybody's goal and what we talk about is how do we graduate students and how do we give them the value. And so I think you'll see a little bit of backlash from the Democrats on for-profits as the leads start coming in from the unemployment figures. But I think what you'll see is a lot of good actors. Now, will equity get involved in that? Probably. I mean, you know, whenever you have businesses out there that are making money, you'll see equity groups get involved, start buying schools again, and they start pushing the bottom line. And so there is a propensity to get in trouble with that business, especially if it's dollars driven. Remember, the focus in education is always the student. You know, student outcomes should always be a school's focus. We do have to make money and have to put the dollars to the bottom line and provide a quality education, and that's what these schools are doing right now. I think that answers your question.
Absolutely.
Surviving the downturn by focusing on innovation. This is really, you know, what we're doing right now to help our clients in the EDU and what we're seeing in the EDU. First thing we talked about earlier was don't try to capitalize on the crisis. You know, you don't try to scare people into going or buying your product. And so what we want to do is we want to communicate to them that education is an opportunity for them right now. So in your messaging, you know, no scare tactics, no pressure, but hey, look, we're offering curriculum and an educational opportunity that can put you in the know, that can put you into a job that's in demand right now. A lot of the jobs that these schools teach for are necessary jobs. And most of the people worked through the pandemic that graduated from most of these tech schools that are out there. And so it's one of those situations where this is a strong piece of society. We don't really need to pressure people into going to school. I think they'll come anyway. Daryl, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd echo everything that you said. I don't want this to be confused with, you know, not capitalizing on the crisis, meaning creating fear and driving them is one thing, but taking that opportunity that schools have right now and retraining, and especially retraining in essential careers, there's nothing wrong with that. And that messaging, I think you can certainly use. On the other hand, we do want to be careful that it doesn't appear that we're trying to take care or cash in right now in taking on as many students, and regardless of what it is. But it's going to be important that, yeah, there are opportunities and there's things that, you know, re-education just offer people and those opportunities. And those are okay to market with.
Yeah, there's another question on the table. It says, for insurance vertical, how can companies sensitively address the fact that people are considering their finances 30, 60, and 90 days out, opting not to take out policies because of that unknown factor? Keep marketing to these people. When they become confident or comfortable with the world around them, they will start purchasing again. I was over at New York Live talking to them. And I mean, they had an original surge because a lot of people, you know, were taking out life insurance policies because they thought they were going to get killed by COVID-19, knock on wood. But the fact of the matter is it slowed down after that. And so toward April, mid-April, their insurance leads were drying up. And so, you know, what they're doing right now is trying to stay steady in their marketing, steady in their program, keep their messaging out there. Yes, it could be 30, could be 60, 90 days, but people will come back to purchasing. And we'll talk a little bit about how people react to these situations. They may hold back or pull back for a minute, but as soon as things start flattening out, you'll see that purchasing occur. They don't really stop purchasing over time. There may be a 4-week or 5-week delay, 6-week delay because they're worried. But as soon as things start flattening out, people start going back to work, you'll see those leads kick back up. People will start buying again.
Yeah, and I think he's focusing that messaging
Yeah.
on the future, but not the overly distant future. I mean, a lot of people are focused on the next. I mean, some are focused on the next day, much less next month. But you look at just make sure your messaging is out there, and you're going to hear that throughout this presentation. Keep marketing.
Well, yeah, I mean, even all types of insurance. I mean, depending upon what product you're selling out there, um, people will have to buy it. And so it's one of the situations where sooner or later they're going to come around. And, our goal and our strategy has been to keep the messaging out there for our clients. And we'll talk about why that's important in a minute. It builds consumer confidence in your brand at the end of the day. And so one way or another, keep marketing. Surviving the downturn, you can't really wait for public demand. And this goes right into what we were talking about with this question was, you keep marketing. And our advice to all of our clients was keep marketing. Because if you pull off, consumers view that as instability in your organization. And so people want to be confident. People want to be comfortable with the product that you're putting out there. And if it stays consistent and the messaging is appropriate to the situation through the crisis, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a recession, people can trust that. And that at the end of the day, that's what branding is all about: is getting people to trust your brand. Consumers' educational priorities will change. In education, we know that people are being laid off, people are unemployed. When unemployment runs out, they're going to look for their opportunities, and generally that's education, because they don't want to go back into the industry where they just got laid off, and so they look for retraining. And so when you do that, you've got to be sensitive to curriculum planning, how that curriculum is delivered, or how that product is delivered, and then the pricing associated with it. Like I said, consumers don't stop spending through recessions or depressions. They continue to spend, but they're choosier on how they spend their money. And so what we have to do as marketers is we have to kind of take a look at what products our clients have, what products are successful, what products aren't, and then the price structure around them. And is there any value that we can put in there, or any discount we can put in there to get them, to make that purchase at this moment in time? They don't stop getting educated. Like I said before, they'll look for retraining to get a more sustainable job, to get a better opportunity, like I said, so they don't get laid off in the future, because they're going to be scarred psychologically by that. Too many companies have cut spending. As we said before, we advise all of our clients not to cut spending, to change how they're spending those monies. But again, if you cut your marketing budget, you're basically going dark. And when you go dark, people think that you've gone out of business, or that you're having issues. And so one of those situations psychologically is you've got to keep in front of people. You don't want them to feel abandoned. You want to have staying power. And honestly, it's mistrust. And so again, at the end of the day, you get people not trusting your brand or being confident in your brand.
And I think this is really critical in the EDU space for colleges and universities right now. Marketing is not only going to be about your prospective students, it's going to be about your current students. It's going to be about building confidence in order to retain them. We're not talking about a product here. And insurance, the question before is kind of a similar one, because it's an ongoing product. It's not a product, it's not a one-time purchase and the consumer has it. If the consumer doesn't feel that there's strength there, that there's longevity in a school or university, then they're not likely to start there.
Correct. They must reinvent themselves. I mean, we all need to reinvent ourselves. How we deliver things, how we do things has to be retooled right now. While some schools are unfortunately struggling, others are reinventing. I think all schools learned that they better have some form of hybrid online learning, no matter their situation. I mean, their general ads need to be online. And I think you're going to see that change for most schools out there, for profit and nonprofit, offering a heck of a lot more online opportunities. Because if this thing rears its head again, that's really going to be your only saving grace, is if you have some level of online curriculum. And so if you're an online educator, or if you have an online platform, you're going to be in good shape in terms of schools demanding your product. We have about 15 minutes remaining. We're right on time. And so, I think as you look at your schools or you look at your product, how can you serve the community in the current environment? And that has to go into your messaging. You have to say, here's what we're doing for the society. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to help. And that's how you pivot and adapt your message. Also, as I said before, how do you innovate? If you don't have online curriculum, then move to online curriculum. If you don't have online degrees, move to online degrees. Have something in that back pocket that you can lean on if we have stay orders again, because I know that most people couldn't survive 2 or 3 stay orders. And then what is your work plan with the current situation? Map out a new plan and go with it. You can't get frozen. People who get frozen in these situations tend to die from a historic standpoint. And so you don't want to be those people. And people who were weak to begin with, it will fall into Darwinian philosophy. The weak will get killed. So you're seeing a lot of these bankruptcies, and you're seeing a lot of these companies die off. Well, it wasn't just because of COVID-19 that they died. They were already in trouble.
Exactly. And I can tell you, I don't believe any school or any business is going to be able to wait this out. And there's no sense waiting it out, because it's never going to go back to what it was.
No, I mean, you look at the current situation, and there's, people are like, will there be a cure? Well, no, there's not going to be a cure for a long time, guys. Come on, let's wake up. And so we all have to look at this and say, we're going to have to live with this situation one way or another. And so, have a plan to work through it. People are going to go back to work, and we'll talk about that here in a second. Refocusing your message. Secure messaging to current students. Your current customers and your current students are your best ones. And so CRM strategy here to death. And so anybody who's in your database, you should be marketing to and messaging right now. Text them, let them know you're okay. Email them and say, here are the products and services that we're selling during the COVID, situation, or you don't say COVID, but you say, these are the products and services that can help you through this situation. When we look at schools, you've got to take a look at the current students as your bread and butter. And so hanging on to those students, talking to those students, mapping out a plan for those students. What is next? What comes next? How are you going to get through it? It's critical marketing. And of any business, Greg Advertising isn't any different. We marketed to our prospects and our clients all the way through this. We let them know what was going on, that we were here for them, that we were working, that, even though we were remote, we had a full staff, and we were here to help them get through this. Everybody leaned on us. And so it's a good thing. Then you need to determine what pieces of the curriculum, or determine what products have a poor survival rate, and then get rid of them. It's a good time, if you're a school, to get rid of the crummy curriculum that nobody's enrolling in, or that's costing you a lot of money to teach out. And so it's one of those situations where teach out of that curriculum and get out of that curriculum now. And then look at the pieces that may suffer but still can be stabilized, and then focus on those areas that can flourish. And this is true of any business. Focus on those products that are the best products that you have, and promote those products in the marketplace that help people through this situation. And make those changes. Focus on what works. When we're looking at marketing channels out there, digital strategies are the channels that everyone should be moving into. Traditional channels aren't as strong right now for one reason or another, and there's some statistics that go along with that. But the fact of the matter is, direct marketing campaigns are trackable. We're running heavy PPC, social, paper inquiry, campaigns right now, and they're successful for our clients. We really haven't missed a beat. If you can offer discounts or scholarships to ease the pain and promote those, create a campaign around it. We have these scholarships available, or we're going to do to help society out, we're going to do a tuition cut. You're going to see probably this year 15 to 30% increases in tuitions at traditional colleges. This is on top of the increases they made last year, which were significant. And again, some of those schools will price themselves out of the marketplace. And so if you're a school out there, you have an opportunity to deliver a product and service that can ease the pain of some of these individuals that are out there. Ultra Trust, trusted brands and products are safe, as we said before. Again, reassuring messages, reinforce with an emotional connection. We're going to get through this together. We're all going to get through this. I guarantee you we will get through this as a species. And so we're going to get through it one way or another and convey that message to the constituency. Daryl, any thoughts?
That was really refocusing your message. Now you talk about refocusing your marketing. So not only is it about what you say, it's where you're going to say it is going to have an impact on who you're reaching and the information that you're going to be able to get them. And Greg talked about it a little bit, but the move to the digital side for everything, not just marketing, but everybody's moved digital. In fact, it'll be interesting when this is all over. I think a lot of people are going to look back and say the COVID situation drove innovation, certainly on the internet and online practices, whether it's online shopping, online education, or whatever it may be. You look at the digital social media right now, January, February, March remain relatively flat, around 20% of mobile use. But beginning in mid-March, when this all started to impact, it really started to drive up the use of social media and digital media into that 25%, and it's significantly higher even now. And the numbers that I think we'll see here in the next couple of weeks are going to be pretty impactful on what's going on. And that's where, you can almost measure a business, whether they're going to be successful or not, is how they adopted the digital side, again, whether it's shopping or whether it's education and online, and how they're processing that. But you look at media app usage like video and lifestyle, and the next slide, we're going to have some more of that. It's just increased. The bottom line, COVID-19 pandemic is deepening users' admission in social media. And it was at a moment when a lot of people were questioning what the value of social media to our society, but it's really driven it back. And a lot of you probably have experienced it. A lot of you probably spent a lot of time on it, communicating with others. And even if you're not paying attention or tracking your own habits, you're probably doing a lot more online than you've ever done before. And you look at usage by different social media or just online apps, just some specific websites, Facebook up 27%. It was already pretty high, but that's a big increase. And in a social media that was probably challenged. Netflix plus 16. I think they were so strong, and that number is actually probably even higher. And that's the one I wish I would have invested in back in January if I would have saw it all going, because I know I use it. YouTube.com, 15%. Then video chat, the next two, Google Duo, Nextdoor.com, House Party, all up significantly. And then just the number of sessions. As Greg mentioned before, we wouldn't have been doing something like this necessarily a year ago, but now it's become mandated, and I'm doing a couple of them this week. So Zoom and Classroom and Microsoft Teams, Hangout, all of these things that you may not have even heard of, or if you heard of, they were kind of on the side, but they've all taken over what we're doing. And even digital news channels, CNBC, New York Times, Washington Post. If you weren't following any of those online, you're probably doing it now.
I think this just shows where you should be marketing. These where the viewers have gone. During this crisis, people are going to look for information and knowledge, and then they're going to look for connectivity. This is where it's at. And so if you're not marketing in these channels yet, you should be marketing heavily in these channels right now.
Yeah. And this isn't new. This didn't all come because of this. This was happening already. It has been for the last couple of years and accelerates every year. This just took probably what was going to happen over the next 2 years and put it into the 2-month period. We just accelerated faster than we ever have before. But, we had the capability to do it, and we did it. And I think we're going to see even more changes over the next 6 months as people learn and adapt to it even more.
Yeah, I don't think people will move backwards. The cost of advertising generally drops. I mean, you're seeing some drops out there, and so what you need to do is go out there and ask for cheaper prices. I mean, with all these companies going bankrupt, with all these companies closed down, less ad dollars are out there in the marketplace, and it's an opportunity for you to negotiate a better rate. And so make sure you're out there negotiating better rates across all digital channels, because spend rate is down right now. And so by gaining more for less, you will increase your voice. We're about out of time, Daryl. Yep. Redirect those marketing budgets to digital marketing, social media, search, news channels that people are watching. Delete expenses from trade shows. You're not going to trade shows right now. I know, Michael, we're doing a virtual trade show, and you can put money in those virtual trade shows, and that's a good thing because people are participating in those. But billboards, client and news business travel, you're not going to have those expenses. Miscellaneous expenses as it pertains to marketing, you're not going to have those. So put your energy into production. We're doing a lot of things that are out there. We're doing a lot of posting. We post for most of our clients on a daily basis in social media, whether we're tweeting or whether we're in Facebook or whether we're Instagram or TikTok. We're very active in everything that we do on a marketing level in social media now, and it really has leapfrogged us heavily into these channels.
And when you're doing that, try to bring value whenever you can. You look at this. This is actually is one of our clients, but they did it internally. They just brought more value and talked about how they serve the community. They weren't talking necessarily about their programs and what they do, but they didn't need to talk about them directly. Just by doing this, they got the message out to that community. And then also we're here in Kansas City, the zoo closed down for the first time in 111 years, and they went virtual. It was a virtual zoo. The kids had to do something. So,
and then lastly, focus on your current students. They're your ambassadors. Make them happy. Communicate with those students where applicable. Ask what you can do for them. And then remarketing, email marketing, texting, market at a high level. That database is gold for you. And so prospective customers or prospective students or current students, keep marketing to them. Where are they in the funnel? What is their interest? Tailor their messages to where they are in the funnel. And so segment that database in terms of your CRM and market to those people, daily, weekly through social media channels and email and text marketing.
Big area for a change for our clients where they were doing maybe one general one each month, and now they're doing probably 5, 6, 7 of them, but they're very much breaking them out into different areas in the funnel, different levels where people are. They're taking money out of non-producing and putting it into producing area.
As we said, send emails, invite all prospects to follow you as well as current students on social media. Build your social media universe. And then don't stop your lead generation process. As mentioned, schools that maintain a consistent message in the marketing exude financial stability and consumer trust. Admissions reps need to be creative in setting meetings and presentations now. And so you're going to use video conferencing for a lot of those initial meetings. And then develop video tours of your campus. And so if you haven't produced video tours of your products or services, you need to do that. And then be open to new concepts and ways of making your school succeed. You guys all need to sit down and manage that. Daryl?
Yeah, I'll use technology.
And then lastly, reinvent increased face-to-face interactions. Instead of calling people on the phone, Teams them, try to reach them via Zoom. There are a variety of ways that you can reach people and talk to them. So use those new tools that everybody's used to using right now. And that's it. We finished up. And do we have any more questions?
Yeah. Thanks, guys. That was really, really informative, and I appreciate you guys sharing all that information. I personally had a question of one of the things that, and we've got just 2 minutes here, but what we've heard is that impressions are obviously increasing with more people online, but not necessarily, that isn't necessarily translating to pull through or purchases. I'm kind of curious from an EDU perspective. We've heard that EDU is sort of staying active as far as the marketing side of it, impressions, clicks, all that leads. Are you seeing a pull through from enrollments decline or stay stagnant or increase? Just kind of curious if you have any insight at all.
Yeah, and I think I certainly can share some of our experience. Early on it was a challenge because it took a little bit adapting. I think that's a little bit leveled off, but we've understood it a little more too. Prior to what was going on, it was really the simple get them in the door. That's what we needed to do. Everything would take care of itself. But by changing the messaging is what really has helped the pull through into the enrollment, into the start, by really now focusing even farther down into that career than that used to be the simple message and then come in and talk to us. Now it's going to take a little bit more work on the marketing or a little bit more work on the voice of the message that you
Yeah, I
have.
mean, your pull through has to be focused on the current situation. And so if you haven't changed your messaging, then you're not going to pull through. And so, we're talking about sustainability and job security with the career offerings that we have out there. And so if you're selling insurance, sell a product that is relevant to the current situation. If you're selling products, we've got a popcorn manufacturer, and I mean, we killed it on Mother's Day because we market the heck out of it. What do you get, Mom? Well, let's send her a can of corn, and so we'll do the same thing for Father's Day as well. We saw it over Easter as well. And so people want comfort. People want to feel confident. And so changing that message and how you deliver that message is super important right now. And so if you're trying to market your product the same old way, your pull through is not going to be there. But if you change that message and give people a reason to respond under the current situation, they will. I mean, we're seeing a lot of activity, not only in direct selling, but also in education.
Michael, I might throw in one other thing too, because I just had a conversation with a school last week about this. Is it's going to take a little bit of patience. Keep that funnel full. They will come when they're ready. Even if they're not coming right now, we're still maintaining a database. We will still push them here in the next month or two. So don't micro focus. Don't say it's not working right now, so you stop everything. You've got to build that funnel, because when it breaks, when the unemployment's at such a level it's going to drive them, it may be a month or two down the road, but it'll drive them.
Yeah, and that's what you were saying earlier in the insurance 30, 60, 90 days. It's true, but keep building that interest, keep building that momentum, keep putting those interested parties in the pipeline. And what's going to happen is it's all going to break at one time for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, really insightful. And unfortunately, we got to end it here. So thank you, great Greg and Daryl Maddox from Greg Advertising. I'm sure we could talk about this all day, especially us three. But thank you for joining. And if there are any questions that we didn't get to and want to answer, you can certainly reach out to Greg or Daryl Maddox on LinkedIn or gregadvertising.com as well. So thanks a bunch, guys.
Also
All
in the
right,
loop.
thank you. Appreciate
Take
the
care.
opportunity.